Welcome. Please comment where you're watching in the world. Leave a like and sub if you enjoy the stories. I noticed him the way you notice everything in that building. Out of the corner of your swollen eyes, a blur shuffling through the echoing hallway that always smells faintly like eucalyptus and printer toner. Earbuds in, hoodie half-zipped, cap low. College age, forgettable. I was still wiping that sandpaper sting out of my nose after a session that took a rib out of me and held it up to the fluorescent lights. Not trauma, not the headline kind, just that ache of realizing I'd become an extra in my own life. I remember thinking, cool, you can be invisible and still pay for parking. That night I got an email. It was kind, properly punctuated, with one of those lowercase usernames that look like a whisper, Daniel_R. He introduced himself as part of a support community my therapist, Dr. Rowe, sometimes recommended to patients. He said she thought I might benefit from gentle company, a place to talk about nothing and everything. He didn't push. He wrote like someone who respected fences. I wanted to believe a fence could hold. We traded messages like folded notes in homeroom. I told him about ridiculous things at first, my bad coffee maker, how crowded the bus got when it rained, the way my apartment's radiator hissed like it had secrets. He answered with small, careful reflections that landed exactly where I hurt. He understood that crowded places made me go quiet for days. He knew the specific flavor of dread that shows up at holidays, how being back home can feel like being recast in an old role you never auditioned for. He never asked for photos. He didn't flirt. He just got it. A rare thing. I started checking my email in line at the dining hall, in the bathroom stall between classes, while brushing my teeth with my phone propped against the mirror. Like that, safe. And then he started showing up. The first time I clocked him, he was across from the marketing office where I worked part-time, pretending to choose between two identical croissants. Hoodie, earbuds, hat. He never looked at me. I told myself it was nothing. College town overlap. Everyone is everyone else's background. Except he kept being my background. Same cafe doorway. Same posture. Different jacket. Every day for 3 weeks, like a shrug that wouldn't end. Once he held the door to my building and said, "Hey," in a voice that felt like a test. Would I recognize it? Would I answer? I didn't. My stomach did a slow, cold flip. I had never told him where I worked. I hadn't told anyone. That night I reread every thread. On the surface, his messages were harmless. Under the surface, they lined up too neatly with things only my therapist knew. My name thing, the way I hated that it came from a baby book of most popular, he alluded to it as if I'd said it to him. The panic attack last fall when an unknown number buzzed at the wrong time. He skirted it like a shoreline he'd walked. None of that lived online. None of that should have been in anyone's mouth but mine and Dr. Rowe's. I Googled him anyway. Nothing. The headshot on his email profile reverse searched to a counseling flyer from some other campus a decade ago. Stock face. Stock empathy. At my next session I asked Dr. Rowe if there was a Daniel in any of her groups. She blinked the way people do when they're trying to get ahead of the truth. "No," she said. "Of course not." When I mentioned the emails and the cafe mirages outside my job, her face dropped for a heartbeat, like someone had kicked out the bottom step of a staircase she used every day. "Forward them to me," she said. I left with my skin buzzing, dread pooling in my elbows. He emailed again that night. The tone had shifted. He wrote that he felt close to me, that he understood why I didn't say hello in person. He liked being near me, even if I didn't know it. Near was doing heavy lifting in that sentence. Near pressed a thumbprint on my throat. I don't know why I searched her full name after that. A habit, maybe from years of trying to make sense of things by turning them into tabs. It didn't take long. An alumni write-up. A LinkedIn. A memorial post for her father that listed family by name. A son, Nathaniel, behavioral psych major. Same city. Same age. Then the school directory. His email format. One vowel different from Daniel_R. The shape of the deception was so simple, it felt stupidly elegant. He had stood in my therapist's kitchen and learned where she kept the cups. I didn't go back to therapy. I didn't reply to the last message. That's when the calls started, blocked numbers, hang-ups that inhaled and didn't exhale. Notes under my windshield wiper, nothing threatening, just close. "You're doing so well. Good luck with midterms." I changed my job. I changed my email. I changed my number. I walked different blocks, then different blocks again. I learned to carry my gaze like a blade. Sometimes I almost missed the feeling of being understood by someone who wasn't making notes for a file. That's the part that embarrasses me most. That part of me pressed her face to the window, hungry for the warm room on the other side. The first ping came at Publix, between the green beans and the bad decisions. AirTag found moving with you. I stared at my phone like it had misdialed. The bubble map pulsed, my little blue self dragging a gray dot through the store like a kid I didn't remember bringing. I'd heard headlines about those things, lost keys, luggage, techno magic, but also the other stories, the bad ones playing between weather and sports. A judge letting parts of a class action lawsuit over AirTag stalking continue. Police reports about tags glued under bumpers. New laws because apparently, the old ones didn't think of dots that follow you. AP News. +2. The Guardian. +2. I cleared the alert and pretended not to feel watched. I checked my purse, my tote, my own ridiculous, jingling keychain. No beep. No tiny white coin whispering found you. The notification vanished the way a wave pulls back from a shell, like nothing had ever happened. That night, my phone woke me at 2:11 a.m. The house carried that Gulf humidity you can drink. From the hallway, the AC sighed like an apology. Unknown accessory detected nearby. The map showed a gray dot pacing the block, then pausing at my driveway as if it were catching its breath. My stomach dropped hard enough to wake the neighbors. I walked outside in a t-shirt and flip-flops and did what the blogs said. Looked in Will Wells' license plate frame, under the bumper, inside the gas cap. I held my phone out like a divining rod. The alert timed out and left me there with crickets and the sound of a late train rolling through Pinellas County like a long, slow decision. By morning, I had a plan. I'd get the car scanned at a shop. I'd file something with someone. I'd stop narrating my life online like the world was a friend. Breakfast tasted like aluminum. At lunch, the alerts returned as a stutter. On, off, on, always moving with you, never hears the thing. I called the non-emergency line. The officer was kind in that tired Florida way. "We can take a report," he said. "If you find the device, call us. If you don't, keep screenshots and don't engage." He said device like it was a stray cat. On the drive home, talk radio said Florida had just stiffened penalties for misusing trackers, numbers climbing from a handful of cases to triple digits this year. The host sounded proud, like we'd finally put railings on the stairs. "Laws catch up late here, storms don't wait. WSF. At the tire place, the manager scratched his beard and said, "Could be in the cabin. Could be in the bumper foam. Could be tossed in the bed of that truck next to you just to screw with you." He looked under the car with a flashlight the size of a bat. "If we strip the panels, you're looking at hours." He named a number that felt like punishment for being scared. That night, another ping. This time the map showed a strange path. My dot at home, the gray dot coming down 275, exiting at the wrong place, making the familiar mistake tourists make. I watched it correct, then settle again on my street. I turned off all the lights. My hands shook hard enough to make the phone think I was running. In bed, I doom-scrolled. There was the UK case, the one where a man glued a tag under his ex's bumper. The judge's ruling in New York that let parts of the AirTag lawsuit keep breathing. Politicians arguing over what to call stalking when it fits on a quarter. None of the articles told me how to fall asleep in a house you just learned has doors for ghosts. The Guardian. +1. On day 4, the alert stopped. I should have felt relief. Instead, the absence buzzed electric. I learned to park in different places. I left the phone in airplane mode when I could stand it. I wiped my socials like a crime scene. No more geotags, no more beach, now. No more photos that showed my neighbor's bougainvillea climbing the fence like a landmark. I set my devices to scream if any tracker decided I was luggage. A week later, I found the tag by accident. I had popped the trunk to shove in a sack of mulch, and there it was wedged in the felt liner near the taillight, white, dumb, inevitable. The serial number winked at me like a dare. I took a photo. I wrapped the thing in foil the way the internet told me to, then drove to the police station with a Ziploc bag and a heartbeat you could dance to. The desk sergeant logged it with a number and a shrug. "We'll request info," he said. "Sometimes we get cooperation." He didn't say from who. He didn't have to. I knew the platform's line by then. "We take your safety seriously," followed by steps I'd already taken and a legal process slow as tide. When I got home, there was a package on my mat. Small, padded. No return address. Inside, a single Polaroid of my car, taken at night, porch light haloing the trunk, the tail light glowing like a cut. On the back, in block letters, "You're hard to keep track of." It wasn't a threat, exactly. It was a victory lap. I called it in. The officer took the photo with gloved hands, like it might smear my fear onto his shift. "We'll add it to the case," he said. He didn't say outcome. He didn't say safe. He didn't say anything that would have helped. For my birthday, I wanted easy. A backyard under live oaks, fairy lights, takeout boxes sweating on a folding table, friends laughing until the mosquitoes gave up. A coworker said she knew a budget candid shooter, Ray, good eye, low fuss, cash discount if he could work free. He arrived early in all black like a waiter who knew better, crossbody bag heavy with lenses, camera strap worn shiny where hands learn you. He counted under his breath, 1222, and checked light by holding his palm up to the string lights like he was offering prayer. When he spoke, it was to the air. "Backlight's a gift," he told my tree. He asked where the outlets were, where the bathroom was, where the fuse box lived, in case these fairy lights trip. And I showed him because I wasn't thinking about male hands and house guts. I was thinking about cake. He moved like a rumor, never there, then there, crouched in the weeds to get my friend mid-laugh, perched on the fence for a wide of everyone toasting. Once I felt the lens on my neck, a cool tickle, and turned to see him counting again, 3-2, clicking as I bit my lip around a plastic fork. He smiled at the LCD. "You glow in low light," he said, and it landed like a compliment I had already paid for. The gallery link came 2 days later, a password, a little crown logo. The pictures were mostly great, my friends looking like better versions of themselves, my sister mid-toast, fairy lights bouquet into planets. Mixed in were shots that felt wrong. A crop so tight it was only my mouth, teeth on lip, tongue shadow, a hemline slip, a brief eclipse of hip when I reached for a lantern, framed like a secret Ray had found and elevated. A close shot of my dress strap sliding as I bent over the cake, shoulder blade like a wing. They were technically beautiful, they were not mine to see like that. I clicked download all, because fear and wanting proof feel similar. Then his email landed, no subject, 35mm, f/1.8, you glow in low light. It made my stomach drop the way the streetcar does on St. Charles when the tracks tilt. I closed my laptop like it could shield me. 2 weeks later, a package arrived, brown paper damp from a storm that throbbed off and on all day. No return address. Inside, a black frame with no glass. The photo was sharp, high ISO smooth, me in my bedroom, back to the mirror, towel open at my waist as I decided between earrings. You could see the freckle at my spine, and the hint of areola through linen like a smudged moon. The angle was high, not the door, not the window. The mirror faced my bed. The only way to capture it like that was from above. I tore the house apart with a fury that felt like sex turned inside out. Vents, bulbs, smoke detectors, outlet plates. Even the art I'd hung without ever noticing how easy it would be to hide an eye. Nothing. The fuse box hummed like a secret. I called the police. An officer with damp hair and the tired politeness of people who meet bad nights on schedules wrote a report. "Unproven access," he said. No signs of break-in. The second package held 5 prints. No frame, just paper that still smelled faintly of chemistry. Me through the living room window, barefoot to the kitchen, remote sliding off the cushion like a small fall. Me curled under a blanket with a hand down the elastic of my underwear, a pleasure I'd never been ashamed of until it lived at 300 dpi. Me asleep. The shutter had caught the exact moment my body forgot it belonged to me. I stopped using the living room. I moved through my house like a cut scene. Curtains closed, lamps off, a dusk that made my skin feel borrowed. In the online gallery, images I remembered disappeared. The shoulder blade shot, the lip bite crop. I had already downloaded them, which meant he had curated post-reaction. Ray had watched me watching and adjusted the exhibit. I wrote to the booking email, hands trembling. "This is illegal." He replied with an EXIF dump like a dare, bedroom mirror, 35mm, f/1.8, 1/125, ISO 1600. Outside series, 85mm, f/2 on sticks. Rule of thirds suits you. I tasted metal. I imagined him outside, using the curtain chords as leading lines, composing my life with the confidence of a man who believes anything is art if he wants it to be. I moved. Found a shotgun closer to the river where brass bleeds into the wallpaper, and you can smell beignet when the wind has opinions. Cash rent. No deliveries. I stopped posting addresses, plates, parties. I stopped letting anyone help hang lights. I still dress in the bathroom, where the mirror faces the tub, and I picture a lens circling the house like a hungry dog, looking for the angle. No more packages arrived. The quarter went on with its sweaty heartbeats, rain thrumming sudden and hard, gutters singing, trombone laughs wafting in around midnight. I could almost believe I was free until a storm night when the lights flickered and the house caught its breath. In the stuttered dark, my body remembered the frame. Vegas sells you the idea that names are optional. At the hostess stand, at the tables, on the strip where everyone's in costume, you can be B, if you want. No one's checking your birth certificate. That's probably why I said yes to Blake in the first place. 2 decent dates. Good manners, okay jokes, hands that stayed at his sides when we hugged goodbye. Chemistry was meh. It faded like a comped smile when the slot club learns your low play. 3 weeks later I started getting DMs from strangers. Stay strong. You're so brave for sharing. A link followed with that tone people use when they're handing you a burning thing. You need to see this. It opened to Reddit, confession subs, karma farms for people who like their shame narrativized. A post with my first and last name in the title like a headstone. Am I a monster for pushing someone down the stairs? The story was written in that breathless, plausibly traumatized style. I didn't mean to, I panicked. It was after a fight. I kept it secret. I'm sick over it. It threaded in details like a magic trick. My city, Las Vegas. References to the resort corridor. The coffee shop and arts district I love. Neon sign included as emoji. The comments believed. Of course they did. That's the point of confession. It sounds like church. There were more. Another account, same voice, admitted to faking a miscarriage to keep a boyfriend, complete with a line about an ER on Maryland Parkway. A third post about abandoning a dog. My dog's breed was right. The name was wrong by 1 letter, like someone had pressed their ear to my life through drywall. The posts used my company's industry like seasoning and circled my neighborhood without saying it out loud. They were careful the way a scammer is careful. It felt honest because the lies were so well researched. Emails started. Not a flood, but enough to make my stomach live in my throat. Rot in hell, animal killer. You ever push somebody again? Hope it's me behind you. Reddit mods removed some of the posts, flagged others as creative writing, but screenshots multiplied. YouTube drama channels read them aloud in chewing gum voices for ad revenue. My name bleeped just enough to keep it legal, while still recognizable to anyone who lived here. I traced the pattern backwards through Petty, the 2 dates. Blake had mentioned an ex named Sandra once, rolling his eyes like she was a punchline. I found her quickly, public IG, face I'd seen at odd angles around town since, buffet line, same dive bar, a selfie in the mirror of a bathroom I'd posted once, those tacky lips on the wall. She followed my coworkers. She got my haircut. She posted from the same bars 2 nights after me, tagging the DJs. The captions on her stories had my phrasing, as if mimicking cadence could open doors. An OP slip finally broke the puzzle. One of the dog abandonment posts said, "He scratches the left side of the couch when he wants out." That's a thing I've joked about only on close friends, green circle, private as I can make the internet. I screenshotted the post with shaking hands and sent it to an investigator a friend recommended. The kind of guy who looks like an ex-cop because he is. He traced a login to an apartment building not far from the Palms. Sandra's floor. Metro knocked. She denied everything in the breathless, plausibly traumatized style of someone who has studied confession as a weapon. "I've never met her," she said. "She's obsessed with me." Then they opened her laptop, and the sessions were still logged in. The tabs were little lit windows into the part of her that could make me fiction and then believe it. It's always less cinematic than you think. Not a dramatic arrest, not a perp walk. A citation. A fine. A year of internet monitoring. That probably means a probation officer glances at a dashboard sometimes and clicks OK. Screenshots never die. The posts had been scraped, mirrored, montaged into top 10 craziest Reddit confessions videos. Comments turned me into a meme. "Okay, Sandra," a way to say stop lying, that used her name but landed on my skin. At a casino bar a month later, because Vegas is small and also huge, I looked up at a sports ticker and saw a lower third cheerin' flash my first name for a split second in an unrelated segment. Common name, common story. My heart slammed anyway. In this town, the surveillance domes and casino ceilings are the only eyes that might save you, and even they don't blink. I pruned my life like a bonsai. Deleted everything I could delete. Untagged, unfriend, unfollowed. Switched to a shortened version of my name that feels like a nickname and a shield. Locked accounts. Purged my highlights like I was laundering myself. I say B at hostess stands now. I stopped going to the coffee shop with the neon sign and learned the barista's name somewhere else. It's funny, Vegas taught me the math of lies long before Sandra did. Mirage is the business model. You walk past a hotel that looks like Rome and forget the desert under it. You let a dealer call you sweetheart and assign it meaning even though it's part of the act. I felt stupid that I didn't spot her act sooner. She didn't want Blake. She wanted the role. She wanted the stage. The applause came in upvotes. Sometimes after work, the sun low like a warm coin dropped behind Red Rock, I drive the strip slow and watch the people on the pedestrian bridges perform joy into phones. Glitter in the gutters looks like broken glass. Broken glass looks like glitter in the right light. I'm not a Puritan. I get the thrill. But I think about how easily a person can become a plot point you didn't write. How fast a stranger's narrative can stick to your face. I keep an old school notebook now, actual paper, ink that bleeds a little when my hand sweats. I write down what I did that day in dumb, dull sentences that mean nothing to anyone but me. Worked. Walked. Fed the dog. Didn't push anyone downstairs. It sounds ridiculous, it helps. When I hear the slot machines fake coins on casino floors, I let the noise wash out the sound of strangers believing. You can live here and never gamble. You can love a place that makes a living on lies and still refuse to be one. I'm not brave. I'm not strong. I'm careful. And in a city where almost everything is a set, that counts. Raleigh sells you calm like it's a product. Pine Air, cul-de-sacs coiled off 540. HOA Facebook groups arguing about mailbox paint. I bought the whole starter kit. Townhome with a tiny porch, video doorbell, 2 nanny cams pointed at the living room and the crib. I was drowning anyway, Slack pings, daycare closures, a toddler who refused naps like it was a principal. When Kiki came recommended in the mom's group, calm energy Montessori-ish, treats them like her own. I wanted to cry. She arrived with a canvas tote and the smile people wear when they've already decided you need them. She was good. Scary good. My kid reached for her immediately, naps slid on a schedule like puzzle pieces, and the house transformed into the after photo. Blocks binned by color, sippy cups lined like recruits. Kiki labeled the fridge in neat, round handwriting, berries for better moods, protein for naps, treats earned. I told myself it was helpful. Gratitude tastes a lot like relief. Then came the concerns, soft as dandelion fluff with thorns. He's a little wired after cereal. Might be the sugar? It's plain Cheerios. He seems anxious when you leave, could be attachment. He's 2. When I said I needed my office door closed for a meeting, she tilted her head. He reads your energy, Mama. You don't have to hide your overwhelm. I started scripting apologies I never meant. I paid her more. I deferred, because saying no while someone is holding your child feels like picking a fight with physics. The first video found me in the Harris Teeter parking lot. An anonymous Instagram account, Triangle Advocate, posted a 12-second clip from my living room cam. Me in a robe, hair in a scrunchie, handing my kid a tablet, then dropping onto the couch with a sigh big enough to be a sin. The caption, "Is this okay? Weigh in, mamas." Comments came like hail. Exhausted is not an excuse. Where's dad? Somebody check on that baby. And then the word that gut punches, unfit. I ran home, ripped the cam down, and checked the other. 2 missing SD cards. The cloud backup stopped the week Kiki started. I stared at the little vacant slot and felt idiot tattoo itself on my forehead. At pickup I asked Kiki calmly, which felt like trying to pet a live wire, "Did you take my camera cards?" Her face didn't move for a second, then softened into nurse voice. "I've been documenting patterns," she said, "in case someone needs to step in." Step in. My voice cracked on the fuck I didn't say. Who? The right people. It's not personal. She set down the diaper bag and straightened a toy she'd already straightened. "Screens at breakfast, Mama. That's a red flag. Breakfast was a Sunday. I was in a robe because I live here." She exhaled like a therapist. "You're defensive. That's common." The word common hit like a slap. The next account appeared before I could report the first. Wake concern, same clips with different captions. My sigh edited under minor key music like a horror trailer. Strangers chorused with pitchforks disguised as prayer hands. Someone DM'd me a compilation on Facebook, re-uploaded, recaptioned, nudged just enough to dodge takedowns. Platform safety teams replied with confetti emojis, and we take this very seriously while the views climbed. Then emails from a spoofed child welfare advocate landed in my inbox. We're monitoring ongoing concerns. If patterns persist, custody stability may be at risk. No letterhead, no case number, just threat breath. That night the baby monitor hissed louder than usual. The dryer buzzer felt like judgment, and every beep in the house sounded like it wanted to testify. I fired Kiki. "I don't need your help," I said, hands shaking. "You need to leave." She pivoted from sweet to righteous, so fast I could hear the gears. "For the Lord's work," she said. She wasn't even religious as far as I knew. "I cannot ignore a pattern. You don't get to be offended by accountability." She took a step toward the crib, and I put my body between her and my son. "We're done," I said, and my voice found steel. She walked out with her tote, and, God help me, blew a kiss to the baby monitor camera as if it were a person. I pulled every camera, changed the locks, wiped my phone, reset every password like ritual. For 2 days the house was quiet in the way a room goes silent when a judge walks in. Then a certified letter arrived, emergency custody petition. Petitioner, Kiki. Attached, edited clips, screenshots, a handwritten statement about emotional neglect, and a bullet point checklist I recognized from my own fridge labels, for better behavior earned pattern. Court felt like standing naked under fluorescent lights while strangers debated the shape of your body. The judge watched 10-second cuts of my worst angles and asked questions about routines, snacks, schedules in a tone that could slice bread. I answered in the clipped, local cadence I use at the DMV. "Yes, Your Honor." "No, Your Honor." Kiki sat 2 rows back, hair smooth, a notebook on her lap like she was the stenographer of my failure. The petition was denied, no basis, no standing, no case. But that's not the same as mercy. I still had to prove I was a mother to a room that wanted content. Kiki vanished afterward, account scrubbed, number dead, tote bag presumably tormenting someone else's pantry. The HOA Facebook group posted about pine pollen. The cul-de-sac debated speed bumps. A new mom asked for nanny recs and 50 comments bloomed like mold. Nights are quiet in Raleigh in that fake way, like silence is on a timer. Every beep, microwave, monitor, dryer, lands like a tap on the shoulder. I scan corners reflexively. I keep a sticky note over the laptop, even though it was never the problem. My son sleeps, mouth open, perfect as a dare. I hum to drown out the memory of my own sigh played like evidence. I was late, wet hem late, standing under the awning outside reading terminal hugging a green crossbody, like it was going to keep me dry. The driver's name in the app was Aston, windbreaker, baseball cap, profile pic from 3 phones ago. He said nothing, which I liked. Windows cracked, radio low. The city smelled like hot brakes and wet pretzels. He asked once if I wanted the AC, then took Allegheny to Broad like he'd memorized my commute. I tipped well because I'm not a monster and left a 5-star review because the ride was exactly what I want from a stranger. Quiet, forgettable. 3 days later a text pinged while I was in line at Wawa. Meeting still on for Friday at 6. I booked the room. Need parking? Unknown number. I typed wrong person and hit pay for my shorty. 2 minutes later, you looked good yesterday. Love the green bag. The roll slid out of my hand and hit the floor mayo side down. I checked the rideshare history. Aston's profile photo held that same little smirk. The windbreaker collar popped like it thought it was interesting. The app masks numbers, I know this. But this wasn't a masked relay. It was a real line with a local area code. I reported it. I clicked all the scary choices. Inappropriate contact, privacy concern, potential threat. The platform replied with a copy-paste that said we take your safety seriously, and we have deactivated the driver, and please rate your experience with our safety team. Nobody called. The app icon kept its same cheerful colors like nothing had happened. The text stopped, and the messages started. DMs from brand new accounts with 0 followers and avatars of gray silhouettes. You didn't show. Lobby was loud. Let's reschedule. They came through whatever platform I still had open. One used my old Twitter that I forgot existed. Another popped into a LinkedIn I only opened to panic scroll during layoffs. A week later, a hotel key sleeve showed up under my wiper blade on South Street, tucked clean like a valet did it. No key inside, just a note in tidy block letters, let's reschedule. The sleeve had the kind of glossy stock you only see on Center City conference hotels. I stood there in the neon and drizzle and said out loud to nobody, "Yo, I'm not doing this." I took the Broad Street line home and pretended not to notice the beeps of phones tapping out at the turnstiles as summonses. The QR codes on posters felt like eyes. At my stop, A kid with a speaker shaped like a skull-blasted meek, and I wanted to cry just because it was normal. He sent lunch to my office next. Not a threat, exactly. A bag with my exact Thai order. Pad Ki Mao, extra basil, level 3 like I'm tough. Paid in full under my name using a burner email. The delivery guy said, "Enjoy," and left me standing by the printer, the smell of chilies mixing with toner. My inbox lit with a receipt from a ghost. A coworker asked if it was from my boyfriend. "Nope," I said, and threw it in the trash like I was the kind of woman who wastes food and doesn't care. I cataloged everything with the dead-eyed diligence of a claims adjuster. Screenshots, timestamps, camera stills of the windshield note, a spreadsheet with columns for platform, message, tone. I brought it to the 9th District. The officer behind the plexi said, "Any threats?" I said, "Not the kind you're allowed to count." He shrugged, palms up. "Keep documenting. Let us know if he escalates." I wanted to ask what escalates meant, like would a paper cut count if it came from a hotel sleeve? I changed numbers. I nuked usernames, retired handles I'd had since Temple. I moved zip codes, from a row house in Point Breeze to a walk-up in Fishtown that sits close enough to the L I can time T to trains. I bought paper maps at an Army-Navy store because it felt like resistance. I learned where the cash cabs still cruise. I tucked 20s in my sock. I let myself be dramatic, because sometimes that's just being alive. Silence held for a month, brittle and loud. I started sleeping with my phone in another room and a foam bat next to the bed, because I'm not buying a real one, and I needed the theater. I didn't call rideshares. I left parties early. I walked with my keys in my fist, even though that does nothing. The city kept being a city. Sirens stitching the night together, the Schuylkill smelling metallic at dawn, a guy on a corner selling umbrellas in a storm like an angel with inventory. Denver gets so quiet in snow you can hear your own bad ideas. The first one was lending Ben my spare key. He accidentally locked himself out of his building after happy hour. Puffy jacket, red ears, that sheepish grin he wears in the break room when the communal coffee burns. "You live 2 blocks from me," he said, palms up like a peace offering. "If I can just crash your couch, I'll bring the key back in the morning." "I swear, Mara." Scout's honor. He was harmless enough at work. The guy who remembers birthdays and refills the printer, always a little too apologetic. I handed over the brass oval on my ring without thinking. Denver was already feathering down, the world muffled. He slept on my couch, left a thank you note on a post-it, and a 6-pack of seltzer in my fridge. Key returned. Box checked. Neighborly. 2 weeks later, the mug I always keep on the second shelf, blue ceramic, chipped lip, sat drying on the rack. I hadn't used it. The closet in the hall stood open by an inch, like a mouth that forgot its manners. My red flannel, laundry basket deep, appeared folded on the chair like a suggestion. I told myself it was stress, winter brain, the way short days make you superstitious. The outage hit during a snowstorm that turned Colfax into a white river. Power snapped, the building sighed, and the hallway went black. I lit a candle because it felt like something to do. In the dark, boots moved up the stairwell with deliberate weight. Crunch, pause, crunch. The air pulled cold under my door, and with it, a ribbon of cologne I'd only ever smelled when Ben leaned over my monitor to show me a spreadsheet trick. Cedar, clean, mail as a locker room ad. My skin went tight. I blew out the candle and stood in my kitchen with a stupid wooden spoon like a talisman. The boots stopped. The lock hushed like a throat clearing. Nothing else. In the morning, the snow on the landing showed prints that stopped at my welcome mat and did not turn around. At work, the fluorescence made everyone look hungover. Ben breezed by my desk, eyeing my travel mug. "New candle?" he asked low like a secret. "Smelled like bergamot?" In the storm. I hadn't mentioned the candle to anyone. Hell, I wasn't sure I'd lit bergamot. I buy whatever's on clearance. "Maybe my neighbor," I said. He smiled, apologetic. "Didn't mean nothin'. Just worryin' about you." He always sounded like he was 2 apologies ahead. When I pulled my phone at lunch, there was a text from a number I didn't know. Nice red flannel. Sleep became performance art. I stacked chairs under the knob like sitcom security, jammed a wooden dowel in the slider, taped the keyhole in blue painter's tape like a cartoon bandage. I swapped out bulbs in the hallway with brighter ones so shadows had shorter teeth. It didn't matter. I woke at 3:11 and 4:06 to the softest interruptions. A blanket corner straightened, the sink drying itself, the whisper of cotton on couch cushions. All the proof of a caretaker, none of the consent. "Install a cam," my friend Jess said, already pulling a hockey puck of a camera from her tote. We hid it in the plant on my bookshelf, a dumb little fern that refuses to die. The app pinged at 1:02 a.m. motion detected. I watched in a blue-white glow while my body performed sleep 3 rooms away. Ben let himself in like you do when you've practiced. He took off his boots, placed them toes together by the mat, polite, and slid his gloves into his coat pockets. He moved like an Airbnb guest in a house he wanted a 5-star rating from. He set his keys down in the same place I do, aligned with the bowl's rim, took a blanket from the back of the couch, and lowered himself into the corner that's conformed to my shape. He watched my hallway. He dozed. At 3:54 he stood, went to my bedroom door, and didn't touch it, just put his palm near the wood like he was feeling heat. He whispered, "Mara," so softly the mic almost missed it. Then he lay down again, and slept until 4:17. He rinsed a glass he hadn't used. He left before the plows made their first pass. Jess swore hard enough to peel paint. "HR," she said. "Now." Under the too bright hum of corporate mercy, HR nodded, frowned, said words like investigate and zero tolerance. I emailed the clip to myself, to Jess, to a Gmail I'd made in college for fear and coupons. They suspended him by afternoon. His face on the team's grid winked out. The detective was kinder than I expected, a woman with boots as salt-stained as mine. She watched the footage twice, jaw tight. "Criminal trespass," she said. "Maybe stalking, depending." She asked how he had the key. I said I'd lent it, once. Her eyebrows lifted a half-inch. "Don't apologize," she said, like she knew what I was about to do. Men make a business out of our politeness. Ben texted that night from a number I didn't recognize. Didn't mean nothing. Just making sure you were safe. City gets weird in storms. Then I miss us. There had never been an us. The cops charged him 2 days later. His desk emptied itself into a cardboard box. HR sent out a bloodless email about respecting boundaries and shared spaces. People avoided my eyes at the coffee pot like my name was contagious. You think proof cures dread. It doesn't. You think a charge and a suspension shut the door in your head. They don't. I kept the painter's tape over the keyhole because it made my hands stop shaking long enough to sleep. I started leaving a ruler at the base of my door and measuring the gap of fresh snow in the morning. Every day, boot prints stopped at my doormat and haloed it like punctuation. No turn back, no forward, just a devotion of weight and then absence. I changed the lock cylinders. I bought a deadbolt old school enough to need satisfying muscle. I told the building about the hallway lights that burn out too fast and replaced them myself when they didn't. I slept in the red flannel like armor. When the storm finally broke and the city thawed into dirty diamonds, I sat on the floor with Jess, 2 women with takeout and a true crime level of paranoia, and we watched the snow melt into nothing. The tape stayed. It's dumb, blue, and obvious. It curls at the edges like a scab I can't stop picking. It's not security. It's a ritual that says, "I see you seeing me." It's the smallest middle finger I can afford in a city where the mountains make a silence big enough for men like Ben to hear their own excuses echo and call it worry. Miami will make you think you're the main character, even when you're just background to somebody else's show. After I finally detonated the thing with Luis, 3 years of on again, off again, that kind of messy, my phone tried to turn the breakup into content. Follow requests, thirst traps in my DMs, you up? From men who think heartbreak is an open bar. Her request came from a profile named March. The grid was heat, rooftop sunsets, calle ocho croquetas, a thigh against a neon sign that said SIN. She was gorgeous in that Miami way, dewy, glossy, an aesthetic built from SPF and audacity. And in half her photos, there was Luis. Same clubs, same smile, same hand on the small of a different back. I didn't accept, didn't decline. I let the request sit like a glass of water in a hurricane. The meme started first, stories where she'd tag me as a joke, edits of my old photos with captions like Mimi Riss, and obsessed much. I blocked the tag, a new account popped up, Mar.Mira, then Mar_Mira 2. She began uploading selfies from places I had just been. A story at La Sandwichery. I swear I just left. 2 minutes later her in the same pink stool. A bathroom mirror at El Santo. 5 minutes later she's there, same lighting, same angle, lips smudged like mine were. My girls said, "Ignore it, mommy. People are loco." But the city shrank. Dolphin Expressway into a hallway. Wynwood walls into a backdrop someone else owned. One night at Hoy Como Air, The place packed to the fire code with bodies that looked like they could dance and people who wanted to sweat them. I felt eyes graze my shoulder blades. I turned, salt in the air, bass kissing my ribs, and there she was at the bar. March. Smiling the smile I make when I know men are watching. Wearing my exact dress, green satin with a low back, the one I bought with a dumb impulse and a credit card I shouldn't trust. She had my lipstick shade too, and if she'd turned her wrist, I think I would have seen my perfume ghosting her pulse. Cute dress, she said, voice Miami soft, that lazy half-laugh attached. Twins. Did Luis tell you to do this? I asked, and hated how small my voice sounded under the horns. She tapped her phone camera like a mirror. I told me to do this, she said. You look better in it online. She tilted the glass toward mine like a toast, then slipped into the crowd the way a rumor moves. The next morning my landlord, Don Julio, called. Nina, he said, breath carrying cafecito through the phone. Your twin came by. Said she lost her keys. I told her I don't give nada without ID, but she said you asked me last week, so. I don't have a twin, I said. Only child. Virgo. Ask my mother. He went quiet. People crazy, he said finally. I changed the locks anyway. Ven portas laves. I went. The new keys were cold in my hand, even in Miami's soup heat. At work, the girls passed a phone around like a secret. Someone had posted a close crop from the club, me at the edge of the frame, her in focus. Caption, who wore it mejor? Comments in Spanglish, Dios mío, a que toxica, same face? The mirror in the bathroom added a fog filter from the shower I hadn't taken. I reported the accounts. They vanished Hydra style, only to return with different underscores. My mother texted prayers in all caps and then, separately, a list of Santeros who do good work. My cousin wrote, block him too. I wanted to, but he'd already found me. Luis texted a week later, 2 a.m., Mars not her name. Then, she said she was you. She told me she wanted to try again. She knew everything. There was a voice note, 3 seconds, him saying my name like a question. I could hear traffic on Biscayne, humid and mean. Savannah will sweeten a thing until you forget it's rotting. The volunteer circle at St. Phoebe's smelled like lemon oil and old hymnals. Ladies with pearl studs and cardigans the color of sherbet, casseroles sweating through foil. I joined because I needed hands to hold my son when daycare closed early, and because the church bulletin promised community for the weary. Mr. Ellison noticed me right off, a widower with a courthouse voice, cuff-pressed shirts, white hair parted like a prayer. He carried chairs, baked pies thick with nutmeg, and insisted on driving me home after evening choir. Savannah ain't for walking after dark, ma'am, he'd say, and it sounded like kindness. On the third ride, he turned off the radio during a commercial and asked, You sleep on the left side of the bed or the right? He laughed at himself, a soft old man chuckle. Forgive me, widowers get curious about arrangements. I let the laugh land and watched the live oaks lean over Victory Drive like they had secrets they'd outlive. He never called me Teresa. Ma'am rolled off his tongue easy as grace. At the parish hall, he made sure I had a plate fixed the way I like it. No boiled peanuts, extra banana pudding. At first, it felt like being seen in a way that didn't cost me. A month out from the divorce, invisibility had a weight. He lifted it for me without asking what it was made of. My boy Nico started mentioning Mr. E, the way kids talk about cartoon characters. Mystery watches from the window, he said one afternoon, building a crooked Lego house on the rug. He waves funny. We live in a shotgun with lace curtains and a porch too small for secrets. All our windows look at all our neighbors. I told myself he meant the mailman, or the old woman across the street with the oxygen tank and 3 cats named after presidents. But that night I saw it. Mr. Ellison stopped on the sidewalk, raised his phone, and photographed my porch like it was a tourist landmark. The flash popped. He flinched, then smiled at me through the glass as if to say, You caught me being silly. It's for insurance purposes, he explained when I opened the door. His hands were empty, which somehow felt worse. After the hurricane last year, I document things. For the Lord's stewardship. He said stewardship the way men say mine. 2 days later, a chicken casserole appeared on the stoop with a note in careful cursive. From your faithful neighbor, rest in him. Then a pecan pie. Then a cathead biscuit tower tied with twine. The mailbox filled with cards signed in that same hand. Verses, exhortations, a clipped article about protecting your home as a single mother. At Bible study, he started quoting me back to myself. Lines I'd spoken in a small prayer circle about the way the house feels haunted at 3 a.m. about missing adult conversations so bad that even the grocery cashier felt like a date. He folded the words like monogrammed napkins, patted them, and set them where everyone could see. The women smiled that slant Savannah smile. The pastor touched my elbow. "He's a good man, Teresa," he murmured low. "Be gracious. We are all a little lonely." "Boundaries are biblical," I said. He smiled like he was listening to a child recite the Beatitudes out of order. It got hotter. Magnolia blossoms rotted sweet on the curb, cicadas screamed themselves hoarse, and the whole city wore a damp second skin. Mr. Ellison took to standing at the back of the sanctuary, so I could see him when I turned to carry the offering. He bowed his head more than anyone, lips moving in a steady thread of prayer like a fishing line. On Sunday he pressed a key into my palm with a glance, so quick anyone else might have missed it. "For emergencies," he whispered. I opened my hand and found nothing there. "Ghost key." Joke. I laughed because women are trained to laugh at men's almosts. The breaking point wasn't dramatic. It was Tuesday, too hot for supper, 2 box fans running, lace curtains limp. I woke to humming, not the box fans, not the fridge. Hymns low, the way you hum to babies who won't be sung to sleep. "Nearer, my God, to thee," plain as daylight. Nico padded into the hall in footy pajamas, hair stuck up like a question mark. "Mr. E is here," he said simply. He was in the living room chair like it knew him. Shoes off, socks gray at the heel, hands folded on his knee the way men used to pose for photographs when cameras took patience. He had a pie on the coffee table, and the television remote lined up square with the edge. My front door was locked from the inside. "I made a key, ma'am," he said when I couldn't make my mouth make words. "You look so lonely." "Get out," I said, not loud. There's a way you speak when your child is in the next breath. "You're not my neighbor. You're not my family." He blinked, and the softness in his face tightened like wet linen on a clothesline. "I am your brother in Christ," he said, and I heard the thin wire in it. "We bear one another up. You have laid down in front of wolves. The Lord sent me. The Lord didn't send you into my house." He stood up slow, like he was giving me time to take it back. "Bless your heart," he said finally, perfectly, the curse tucked inside the blessing, the whole South in 3 words. He slid his shoes on, taking care not to scuff the rug, and walked out with the pie. The lock clicked behind him like punctuation. The pastor asked if I was sure when I told him. Mr. Ellison said he was concerned. The ladies on the volunteer list shook their heads in the rhythm of prayer and gossip. "He's just trying to help," one said. "He baked for you." Someone else. "Maybe don't wear leggings to choir." Grace meant be quiet. I changed the locks. I told Ms. Loretta, who runs 3 blocks of gossip like a switchboard. I taught Nico to shout fire instead of help because women in this city told me that's the only thing makes people come. At night I sat on the porch and let the humidity knead my scalp and waited. He passed sometimes, hat tipped, eyes on my hands. He mailed a letter apologizing for overstepping in zeal. He underlined zeal like he wanted me to admire the word choice. Mr. Ellison didn't come back in. He didn't need to. He'd made himself a prayer that lived in the house. The casseroles stopped. The cards slowed. The pastor preached a sermon about hospitality. The magnolias kept dropping fat, ruined flowers that bees loved anyway. I found the little pinhole in the lace curtain where a camera lens could sit and see the whole little world of my living room, and I sewed it shut with tiny, ugly stitches that would have embarrassed my grandmother. When the cicadas built to their nightly scream, it sounded like the city telling me we were all making a noise that meant survival. I hummed a hymn of my own, crude and off-key, just to drown out any other tune that thought it could recognize itself in my house. We weren't really friends in high school. Josh was the kid who thought debate club could solve grief, and that every group project needed a brand strategy. He wore blazers to pep rallies and said things like "my guy" to teachers. After graduation, he drifted into the Phoenix startup slurry, co-working spaces that smell like burnt espresso and carpet glue, pitch nights where everyone claps for disruption, with a hint of sunscreen still on their forearms. I forgot him until he remembered me. It started with LinkedIn congratulating me on the move. I hadn't moved. I clicked through and saw a new headline on my profile: Independent Marketing Strategist, Brand Rehab, Narrative Architect. There were roles I'd never had, 3 fractional CMO gigs, a keynote in Tempe I didn't give, and bullet points about scaling authenticity across channels. Under references, Josh R., previous collaborator. He'd tagged himself like a remora. I reported the changes. I changed my password. I turned on 2-factor. The next morning my Twitter, dead for months, was resurrected. Hot takes about burnout, a thread dragging toxic agencies, and a space where the host introduced me and a synthetic version of my voice said, "I'm done apologizing." The voice had that offness I can hear in AI, too shiny in the vowels, like someone polished them. People liked and retweeted. Someone DM'd me, brave. Then my boss forwarded an email from myname.marketing@gmail, subject, transition. "Hey, it's time. I'll be resigning and going public with what happened. Please route all future correspondence to my personal." Me. The signature had my cell and a link to the fake LinkedIn. I called my boss immediately, breathless under office fluorescence. He sounded scared and annoyed and careful. "We support you if you need time," he said, like he was reading off an HR palm card. Josh, I thought. Josh did this. I had the memory of him, senior year, cornering me at a party to explain why my college essay needed a stronger brand arc. I still remember the phrase, a narrative people will invest in. I found his number in an old phone backup. He picked up on the first ring like he'd been jogging beside the call. "Hey, I was waiting for you to sync." "Turn it off," I said. "All of it." He laughed, pitch deck slick. "You're freaking out, which is natural. But trust me, we're crafting a story people engage with. Don't you want to control your own brand?" "I want my life back." "You're thinking small. We're in a soft launch. I'm placing you on podcasts, women in tech stuff, workplace trauma, big reach. You'll convert. Also, I tweaked your bio, cleaned the filler words. The numbers will slap." "Josh," I said, and heard my voice flatten. "It's theft." "Co-creation," he corrected. "Don't be precious. We ship." For 3 weeks my life split into 2 search results. Page 1 had her, me but compelling, threads, clips, a Medium post titled, "I loved overtime until it didn't love me back." My brother texted a screenshot. "Is this you?" My mother called to ask if I was okay, and then to ask what fractional meant. Recruiters sent emails with subject lines like "We want your voice." Meanwhile, I took the light rail past bleached billboards to an office park where the AC was always losing to the heat, and tried to do my job while legal asked me to restate myself in smaller words. I hired a lawyer with desert plants in her lobby, and that patience you learn from monsoon seasons. "We'll proceed precisely," she said, tapping a pen against a yellow pad. "You're not angry, you're accurate." She coached my phrases like we were rehearsing a deposition. Impersonation, deceptive practice, unauthorized access, defamation by implication. Saying them out loud felt like choosing between tools for a repair I'd never learned. In her conference room, the AC vent rattled dry dust. "He's counting on you being embarrassed," she said. "Don't be." We sent a cease and desist. Platforms moved like saguaro, stately, slow, eventually. LinkedIn asked for a photo of my driver's license next to my face. Twitter asked me to fax something like it was 1997. My bank flagged a password reset from an IP in Arcadia. I froze my credit. I told my boss I wasn't quitting. I told the truth so many times it lost flavor. Josh called again, chirpy. "Metrics are happy. Your thread did 500K impressions. Next up, a Medium follow-up, maybe a Substack. Also, your boss is sweating. Consider leverage." "You're building a person I have to live after you leave," I said. "That's the point," he said. "Think long tail." "You're welcome." He tagged himself in another post as former collaborator. Podcasts reached out. "We'd love to hold space for your story." I wrote back to one, "Please remove me from your docket." They replied with a sad face. In the 3rd week, the legal letter must have hit right because things went quiet. His last email, subject line parting notes, said, "You're not maximizing your potential," and then nothing. The Twitter stopped. The fake Gmail sent a bounce. The LinkedIn went back to boring. He ghosted like a bad founder after a bad quarter. But the ghost accounts didn't die, they calcified. Screenshots of my brave thread lived on Reddit for people who love watching train wrecks. A Google cache clung to a fabricated bio like a sunburn peeling slow. At work, the air never fully cleared. You can't unring a bell or unforward an email. A client asked in a meeting if I was the one with the podcast. A coworker said, "Good for you," in that careful way you say to strangers. My boss is nice again, but his eyes do a searching thing when we talk like he's checking for extra me. I changed my passwords again. I put everything behind a hardware key. I keep copies of my ID in a folder marked with a wrong name, so I can pretend it's not me I'm always proving. My lawyer emails occasionally to say, "Any new activity?" like weather. Phoenix in August exists on the surface of the sun. Heat bakes everything flat, the freeway shimmer, the billboards, your shadow. People say, it's a dry heat, and we all laugh like that's mercy. I sit in a co-working space for the AC and watch men in branded tees tell each other how authenticity scales. When the monsoon finally breaks, dust rolls like an animal across 7th Street, and the lights flicker and the internet hiccups. For a moment, the whole city forgets itself. Then the routers catch, the cold brew lines resume, and the story records over itself again. When I Google my name now, I see both of us. Me making decks and doing the job. Her braver, edgier, a better arc. I hate her. I envy her clarity. I keep showing up anyway. My narrative is small, emails, deliverables, a receipt for a cease and desist framed above my desk where a diploma should go. On the light rail home, a man across the aisle scrolls a thread with my face at the top and doesn't look up. I feel the heat climb the windows. I breathe. I practice being boring on purpose. When we were kids, Melanie copied, because that's what little cousins do. I cut my bangs crooked. She cut hers crookeder. I said my favorite color was sea green. She said hers was sea greener. Family photos show her standing a half step behind me on the triple-decker porch in Dorchester, chin lifted like she could catch the same sun if she leaned just right. It was annoying, not alarming. My mother would stage whisper, she's femme ly, as if blood excused everything up to and including theft of personality. We grew up into Boston women, Stoops and Dunkin' iced coffee in January. Wicked, used sparingly, a soft spot for the red line even when it stalled between Andrew and JFK/UMass. I posted a picture one night in a red wrap dress, brick alley, string lights, my hair tamed for once. The caption was nothing. South End, finally warm. 2 days later, Melanie uploaded a mirror selfie in the same dress, same wrap, same side part, same lip. She'd even found the heel with the tiny gold buckle. Twins, she wrote, tagging me. I laughed and texted, cute, then muted her stories for a week like that would change gravity. It got small weird first. She started using my idioms in comments. I'm feral for this, membership revoked. Phrases my fiancé said were weirdly you. At my aunt's cookout in Quincy, she laughed at a joke with my exact timing. Head tilt, shoulder bump, a breath before the sound. It landed wrong, like hearing your own voicemail played back in the wrong room. When I looked over, she was already watching my mouth. Then it went big weird. I didn't post about the dress appointment. I took a half day off work, slipped onto the green line like a secret, and met my friend at a boutique on Newberry, where the saleswoman whispered designer names like sacraments. We took no photos. I swore my friend to silence. Still, 2 nights later, Melanie's story popped up. A white dress in a softly lit fitting room. The hanger tag angled so the logo was visible if you knew how to read eyes. Could get used to this, she wrote. If you paused, you could see a sliver of my reflection in a mirror within a mirror. The day I went. She'd followed me. I started catching her car in my periphery, 2 lengths behind on Mass Avenue, turning when I turned by South Station. At Haymarket, she showed up randomly and asked about the ugly cute tote bag I'd bought at a thrift store in JP. Told you you'd wear it, she said brightly, as if we'd discussed it out loud. As if she lived in the private monologue I carried down Tremont. The screenshots arrived on a Thursday night with the subject line, "Be honest." They were composites, my name at the top of a text thread, my side punctuated with the exact emojis I overuse, and messages I supposedly sent to a Nathan. Flirty, grimy lines. A photo cropped just so. The timestamps matched nights I'd been out late. The phrasing was what gutted me, not generic "you up." Trash but sentences built out of words I'd actually used with my fiancé in the early days. Stupid inside joke phrasing like "you're a menace" and "bring your chaos." They'd been lifted from old messages and pasted into something new. I walked out to the stoop with the phone hot in my palm. Crickets, sirens, the distant slam of a trolley door. My fiancé opened our door behind me, the air from the hallway cooler than the night. He said he didn't believe them, and I believed him believing me, until I saw the way his eyes stuttered at the punctuation that was mine. "Someone is messing with us," I said. "Melanie?" he asked, and the name was a dare. We played detective. A friend at work knew a guy who could tell if a stitch was crooked. He blew up pixels and circled artifacts, mismatched compression, inconsistent baselines, a green halo around a timestamp. "Cut and paste," he said, and wrote it up so tidy a judge could sip his Dunkin' and nod. We sent it to the family group chat. My aunt replied with a long voice note about prayer. My mother typed, she's family. My cousin Melanie's sister texted me privately, I'm sorry. She won't stop unless someone else makes her. I confronted her on a brick sidewalk in the North End, where the line for cannoli snakes passed tourists taking photos of laundry strung between buildings. She arrived in a camel coat like it was October, hair set to the angle of mine. You sent those, I said, no preamble. She smiled like a child being praised for coloring inside the lines. I always wanted what you had, she said, not shy. You get to be first. I always have to be second. It's not fair. She said, fair like a Boston faya. And for one flicker I was 12 again, standing at a backyard birthday while she opened the present I'd begged for. You can be anything you want, I said, and hated the way it sounded like a guidance counselor and not a threat. She looked past me at my fiancé waiting a careful half block away, and her face changed, not envy, not anger. Hunger. He deserves better, she said, sing-song. Someone real. After Marcus left, the two-flat felt like a winter glove with a missing hand. The upstairs creaked with my footsteps. The downstairs sat quiet as a kept secret. I put a listing up, garden unit, heat included, steps from the pink line, must be okay with radiators that hiss like they're gossiping. Drew answered first. Late 20s, polite, a Bears beanie in his photo, said he was a grad student at UIC working on network optimization. He showed up on time, boots wiped at the door, ma'am glued to his sentences like a Midwestern courtesy sticker. He looked around and nodded at things most people ignore. The fuse box, the return vents, the Coke's plate near the baseboard. Appreciate you, he said, handing over 3 months' rent, cash, in an envelope that smelled like a bank. The first weeks were ideal. Rent early, packages stacked like Tetris in the shared vestibule, no parties, no midnight stomping. I forgot he was there until I didn't, until the sound started. A faint scraping under my hardwood, like a coat hanger threading a seam. Murmurs under the dishwasher that matched my phone call cadence a half-second late, my own voice taking the long way home. What is that? I asked the radiator, which clanked back an old building's answer. Everything, nothing. One night in February, Chicago locked the windows with ice. The glass sweated. The snow on the sill turned to a kind of heavy sugar. I climbed on the dresser to tuck a towel at the top sash and saw my bedroom vent. Just a finger turned loose, screws shy of flush. I felt the kind of anger that starts in your molars. I unscrewed the grate and reached in. My knuckles knocked a small cylinder anchored with painter's tape. A cheap microphone, black as an apology. I didn't scream. I put the mic in a sandwich bag, set it on the table like evidence, and texted Drew. Upstairs. Now. He came up with his hands visible, that careful Boy Scout posture men wear when they know they've crossed a line and want to look like they didn't. Ma'am Lena, he corrected. I'm real sorry. I was testing a setup for class. I should have asked. For class? I held up the bag. Under my bed? He shook his head too fast. The vents carry everything. It's a cool propagation problem. I got excited. Tech experiment went wrong. His cheeks flushed the color of frozen fingers. I'll uninstall it all. I'll lower my rent for the trouble. Get out, I said. No flair. Just the fact. You're evicted. He nodded like he'd been planning to agree with me. Appreciate the clarity, he said, and for a second I hated the Midwest for giving us words that sound like olive branches when they're really knives. He left the next morning with a backpack, no furniture, like he'd never unpacked. I changed the locks twice. I installed a camera above the front door that chirped when the mail came and when the fat neighborhood cat decided to practice parkour. I slept with a hammer on the nightstand because it made my body think I had a plan. Then my phone wiped itself clean. Not bricked, just rinsed. Photos gone. Notes blank as snow. My email signed out on everything at once like it had gotten offended. The thermostat spiked to 82 at 3 a.m., then fell to 50. The smart bulbs in the living room, Marcus's last gift, a joke about mood lighting, flashed on at 4 with a warm scene named Romance I had never set. The doorbell rang itself twice. I called the police. The officer wore salt on his boots and boredom on his face. He checked the windows and jiggled the locks and asked if I had an ex. I have a downstairs tenant I evicted, I said. Grad student. You got proof he's been back? My devices are haunted, I said. Does that count? He aimed his flashlight at the camera above the door. No prying. No broken glass. You got anyone who can help with the tech? I called a friend of a friend, one of those South Loop IT guys who can talk to routers like they're sullen toddlers. He crawled behind the TV and grunted at the tangle. He sniffed your network, he said finally. Your stuff isn't smart, it's promiscuous. He reset things, hardened passwords, put my thermostat in a digital timeout. Don't reuse anything. Ever. For 3 nights, the house behaved. Then I heard humming through the vent, soft as sheets. It took a second to realize it was me. My own voice humming some nameless tune I make when I fold laundry, played back with the brightness turned down. The bulbs dimmed on their own, settled on warm candlelight. I unplugged everything I could lift. I shut the breakers like I was teaching the house a lesson. I slept in the silence of dead circuits, wrapped in a hoodie that smelled like radiator heat and metal. In the morning, the doorbell rang again. The app showed a gray smudge where a face should be. The building's maintenance guy, Mr. Castillo, who knows every complaint in Pilsen by the sound it makes, came to look at a flickering hallway light and stayed because I asked him to. He opened the fuse box with the reverence of a priest and frowned. "What's this?" he said, and tugged a thin, unfamiliar line that ran out of the box into the crawl space like a vein that hadn't always been there. We followed it. He belly crawled. I held the flashlight with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. The line snaked past dusty joists, past piles of old owners' sins, to a nickel-sized lens set flush in a rough-cut board, pointed straight up like an unblinking eye. Directly below my bed. Hardwired. Not Wi-Fi. Smart-proof. I sat back on my heels and let the cold from the concrete slap up my spine. How long? I asked no one. The lens looked new. The wood didn't. Mr. Castillo swore softly in Spanish, like a prayer outrun. We pull it, he said. We pull all of it. He cut the line at the source, and the house breathed different. The detective I finally got on the 4th try, female, efficient, no patience for my apologies, took photos, bagged the lens, asked for the exact spelling of Drew's last name. I didn't have it. I had a phone number that went to nothing and a rental application with the grad program written in block letters. She ran what she could run and came up empty. Fake name, she said. We're good at being smoke. I filed everything and changed everything. New router, new thermostat, dumb bulbs from a hardware store that smelled like rope. I taped the vents until the radiators knocked in protest. I slept in the middle of the bed like a dot on a target, and then finally, at the edge like someone who could fall off and live. Chicago held its winter too long that year. The snow plows chewed the curbs, and the sky stayed the color of old ice. Upstairs, my floorboards whispered even when no one was downstairs. In the quiet, I learned to hear the difference between pipes groaning and pipes carrying back a version of myself I didn't perform. I joined the hiking meetup because my apartment felt like a terrarium. Ferns thriving, me fogging up the glass. Portland will do that. Weeks of wet, ceilings the color of dishwater, newsfeed full of people pretending to be mushrooms. The group called itself Tuesday Dawners. The leader called himself Ridge. Slow smile, wool beanie, the kind of jaw that makes you forgive a lot of cliches about the call of the wild. He had the voice guides have, quiet, and somehow you bend toward it. On that first Forest Park loop, he talked about reading trail like a language. Nurse logs, cat's eye fungus, how sword ferns point you home. He slipped in small kindnesses that landed like intimacy, adjusted my pack straps without hovering, flicked a slug off my boot with a twig like it was a magic trick. Everyone adored him. I wanted to be the kind of person who didn't. After 3 trips, I noticed my notifications were off tempo. The group met early, 1 week, and I arrived late to a trailhead empty, but for 2 crows and a bag of stale bagels on the hood of Ridge's Subaru with a post-it. We looped ahead and a smiley face that felt like a dare. Group photos went up without me. Wet hair, grins, someone's dog in a bandana. The captions were all family and our people. I scrolled back to the RSVP list. I'd been the only maybe. Ridge med that night. The Dawners are great, he wrote, but they don't do the kind of hike you need. You have clean feet. I can tell. Next time, trust trek? Just us. Fog, sunrise, no noise. The quiet that scrubs you. He added a tree emoji and a black heart. I stared at the screen too long and told myself I was being dramatic. I said yes. We met at 4 a.m. in a lot off Larch Mountain. The kind of darkness that presses on your face. Ridge handed me a headlamp, new, still in the package, and a thermos that smelled like cedar tea. No bars up here, he said, tucking his phone in the glove box. No need for those little leashes. I slipped mine into my hip belt anyway, the way you keep an extra condom in your wallet years after you've needed it. A superstition of preparedness. The trail swallowed us. Moss muffled our footfalls. Fog hung between the hemlocks like a curtain that wouldn't rise. Ridge talked as we climbed, about how the forest keeps score, how people with dirty souls leak plastic into the ground, how most meetups were social media cosplay for the lonely. He said he only trusted people who hiked when they were hungry and didn't photograph their lunch. I laughed because it was easier than arguing, and because I didn't want to be the joke. Halfway up, the switchbacks blurred. My skin was damp, my thighs a slow burn. Ridge reached back to keep me from stepping into a sink of mud, hand light on my hip. "You're quick," he said. "City quick. We can sand that down." "Sand me down?" I tried to make it banter. "Clean things belong to the forest," he said. "You can hear it on you. Apartment air. Third floor view of an alder that kisses your fire escape every windstorm. Gray cat on the sill. Name like food." He smiled. "Taro." I stopped. The fog breathed past my mouth like something alive. "I never posted my apartment view." He shrugged. "Portland's small. You mentioned south-facing light at the first meetup. Your shoes had Mississippi mud on them that day, a stripe from the planter outside your door. Also, your cat follows sun like a compass. And you kept a paw print sticker on your bumper until last week." I hadn't had a bumper sticker in 2 years. I felt suddenly naked inside my rain shell. "Have you been watching? Don't get spooked." "I learn people," he said mildly. "They tell you how to keep them safe without meaning to." We climbed. The fog thickened until my lamp reflected back at me, a white wall. The quiet here was a body. When I tried to drink, the thermos lid slipped in my hand, and he caught it, fingers closing over mine. "How long would it take?" he asked lightly, as if asking my 10K pace. "Before anyone would miss you if you took 3 days just to reset. Your boss is new. You don't call your mother back. Your neighbors don't know your last name. Taro's got an automatic feeder." My laugh was ugly. "Is this the part where you tell me you're a dom and I say I didn't consent to a scene?" His smile didn't move. "Power is dirt, Kaylee. It runs downhill. The forest keeps what you give it." I told him I needed to pee. I stepped off trail, counting steps so I could step back, and when I turned to return, the path had vanished into poured milk. The ferns all looked like ferns. The headlamp caught particles in the fog until I felt like I was moving inside my own breath. I called his name, and the trees ate the sound. My phone said 1%, and then 0% with that smug little blink off. I moved because not moving is the thing that kills you. I did what I could remember from a safety blog I'd half-read, kept the slope on my left, followed water when I found it, listened for the low freight of the road. Once I heard footsteps behind me, or squirrels, or my own boot echoing in my skull. Once I heard my own voice delayed, repeating the last thing I'd said out loud. No, it sounded soft in the needles. Dawn has a weight when you earn it. The fog thinned just enough to separate tree from space, and then the lot appeared like a mirage, dark cars made into animals by dew. Ridge's Subaru wasn't there. No headlamp on the hood. No note. I sat on the asphalt and cried raw enough to taste iron. Then I drove home, hands shaking on the wheel, and when I got to my apartment, Taro blinked at me like none of it had happened. Ridge's profile vanished before noon. The Tuesday Dawners posted a photo from Pittock Mansion at sunrise. "Our people. Fog magic." Someone commented, "Where's Kaylee?" No one answered. The follow requests started like lint, small, harmless, everywhere. Blank profiles with names that felt generated by a shrug at justtheir4vibes_12, at Apollo_loves_dogs, at Coffee Ocean Wave. 0 posts, 0 followers, 0 following except me. I'd delete, and 2 days later another one would show up, same nothing energy. I figured it was bots or some growth hacking intern at a startup who didn't know San Diego influencers from regular people who post their burritos. I didn't connect any of it to Kara until I started seeing her everywhere. First time, sushi spot in North Park, the one with the green tile, and the bar that's too bright. I was with Maya and Luis, doing the thing where you pretend a spicy tuna roll can reset your week. There was a woman at the bar, hat down, phone tilted, using her front camera like a mirror. Every time I glanced over, she looked away just a click too fast, smile evaporating like sea spray. I told myself she just had the kind of face you think you've seen before. Second time, breakfast place in University Heights. I went alone with a paperback and the weird mental script that goes, "No, I'm not waiting for anyone." She slid into the corner booth behind me, another hat, different color, same brim shadowing the same cheeks. She ordered, then barely touched the food. I kept reading the same paragraph about a woman making choices and forgot what any of the words meant. Third time, taco truck parked by the skate park. She sat in an old silver sedan with the window down halfway, phone pointed toward me through the steering wheel, laughing out loud by herself like someone practicing. When I turned, she smiled. Not at me, at the act of being seen. And that's when my brain finally reached into the junk drawer of old problems and pulled out a name. Kara, my little brother's ex. 3 months of chaos 2 years ago, slashed tires, tearful apologies that came wrapped in posts about healing, then another coincidental run-in. He said she'd followed him to the gym and bumped into our mom at Vaughn's. I'd met her twice back then, high ponytail, big eyes, intense compliments that felt like theft. I hadn't thought about her since. I stood there with carne asada cooling in my hand and stared too long. She didn't move, she performed stillness. I walked toward the sedan and she panicked, fumbling for the gear shift, scraping the curb as she sped off. A chalky scar bloomed on the concrete where metal kissed it. Okay, I said to no one, to the ocean air. After that, I started seeing the car. Outside the bar in OB where Jem plays trivia. Nose out by the donut shop on 30th. Idle across from the laundromat where everyone pretends the TV on the wall is interesting. Always 2 lengths back at a light, always her face half hidden, always a different hat. She switched them like moods, baseball cap, bucket hat, a sun hat that belonged at the delegate, same chipped coral nail polish on the hand holding the phone. I locked down my socials. No more location tags, no more shots where the mural behind me could be reverse image searched in 5 seconds. I scrubbed my tagged photos. I switched my handle to something ugly on purpose. The follow requests kept coming, clean, blank, patient. The notebook arrived a week later. Brown envelope, no return address, my name printed in block letters like a school project. Inside, a pocket-sized grid notebook filled with dates, times, places. It wasn't messy or frenzied. It was neat, devotional. Tuesday, 7:12 p.m., she orders al pastor, extra lime, sits on driver's side stool, reads receipts before tossing. Friday, 8:03 a.m., blue hoodie. Late. Coffee, iced, no syrup. Nails bitten. Little sketches lined the margins, my tote bag with the tiny embroidered lemon, the tattoo on my forearm, the chipped corner of my phone case. It read like prayer, observations repeated until they meant something. I filed a report. The officer at the neighborhood substation listened while sipping a horchata from the taqueria next door. He wrote things down. He said, "We'll monitor, and if there's a direct threat, call us right away." I showed him the notebook. He flipped through it, nodded at the neat handwriting like that made it less weird. "Nothing actionable," he said, and the words felt like a shrug that weighed 100 pounds. My brother drove down from Riverside ready to breathe fire. He knocked on my door with that big brother energy that makes you 12 again and said he'd handle it. He texted Kara. She replied with something spiritual and vague. He blocked her again. He stayed the night on my couch with a baseball bat next to him, like we were cosplaying safety. In the morning, the silver car wasn't there. He went home. By sunset, it was back. I left town for a bit. Stayed with our cousin in Santa Barbara. I walked the beach and pretended that gulls aren't just sky rats, and that not seeing the silver car meant it didn't exist. I slept with the window open, and woke up in the middle of the night, certain someone was standing in the room. There wasn't. There was only the idea of her, which is sometimes worse. When I came back, I filed for a restraining order. I brought the notebook, screenshots of the blank accounts, a list of sightings. The hearing was a 10-minute thing with a man in a robe who looked at the papers, and then at me, and said the words like he'd said them to a lot of other women. No direct threats. No clear pattern of intent. I wanted to say the intent is me. I wanted to ask if reverence counts. I went home and shut my blinds in a city where blinds are almost an insult to the sun. I called my dad. He said, "People like her need attention, like attention is the same as oxygen." I said, "I can't stop breathing." He told me to take a self-defense class. I Googled it and then closed the tab. I tried to be normal. I ate on patios again, but I sat with my back to walls and my eyes on the street. I memorized the differences between silver sedans, faded bumper sticker versus clean trunk, dent near tail light versus none. It didn't help. Everything started to look like everything else. San Diego is built for being seen. Sunlight, outdoor tables, murals begging to be posted. I learned how to move through it like a shadow. One afternoon in Little Italy, right after the farmer's market, I was juggling tomatoes and a baguette like a rom-com extra when Kara stepped out from behind a stand. No hat. Hair down. Face fully hers. We were 3 feet apart. She didn't look angry. She looked happy, like she'd found something she lost. "Hi," she said. Her voice was small and practiced. "You look good." "Stop following me," I said. It came out flat. I expected my voice to shake. It didn't. "I'm not," she said. "I'm noticing." She smiled, the kind you do when you're trying to show you don't have teeth. "You're better than him anyway." A vendor coughed. Someone's kid cried because someone else's kid got the bigger cookie. A scooter whirred by with a bell ding that sounded apologetic. The ocean glare off car windshields made everything look like it was underwater. "If you come near me again," I said, "I'll call the police." She tilted her head. "You did." She lifted a shoulder. "They said nothing actionable." She said it the way the officer had, like she'd practiced the cadence to get it right. She took a small step closer, and then stopped like she'd hit tape on a floor. "I like when you wear the lemon bag," she added softly, almost tender. I moved into the cul-de-sac in late March, when the yards were still patchy and the neighbors still wore coats to get the mail. The real estate agent called it quiet and friendly, the kind of street where folks put pumpkins out early and never let the snow sit on the sidewalk. It felt like a soft landing after the divorce. Unfinished basements, an extra fridge in the garage, Kroger 5 minutes down the road, the air smelling like wet mulch and exhaust. I told myself I could learn to like quiet. Frank introduced himself the afternoon the moving truck left. He appeared with a flat foil pan that steamed in the cold like it had lungs. "Welcome casserole," he said. "Green bean. My Barb's recipe. We lost Barb last year, so I keep her alive with butter." He laughed like the end of a local news segment and set the pan on my counter without asking. "Ope, let me squeeze past you." His hand barely grazed my hip the way Ohio men do when they think they're being helpful. He pointed at my broken mailbox flag before he left. "I'll get that fixed for you, don't you worry." The next morning, my lawn looked like the before picture of a Scott's commercial, and Frank was already pushing a mower across it in neat, satisfying lines. "Yours was getting long," he shouted over the engine. "Figured I'd run you over while I was already out." I stood on the porch with coffee, not sure whether to protest or say thank you, and landed on the Midwestern middle ground. "Oh gosh, you don't have to do that." He smiled like I'd said yes. It went like that for a while. He took my trash cans to the curb before I woke up. He slid a note under my mat about the day the city switched recycling lids from blue to green. When the wind ripped the storm door open and bent the hinge, he fixed it while I was at work and left a sticky note on the glass. "All set, no charge. F." He helped me carry a bookshelf in from my hatchback and commented that it belonged on the west wall. He was right. I told my sister on the phone, bragging like I'd cracked some code of post-divorce life. By the small house, say thanks for the casseroles, be the kind of person with a broom by the front door and a snow shovel already marked with your address in black Sharpie. "Just be careful," she said. "People get funny with single women." I almost said, "Not in Ohio." People here say sorry when you bump into them. The first time he let himself in, he acted like I'd asked him to. I came home to the smell of potting soil and found him kneeling by the sliding door, repotting a plant that had clearly given up on me. "You left this guy thirsty," he said, neither accusatory nor amused, just factual. A key glinted on the table beside him, the spare I kept in the ceramic dog by the doorbell because I hadn't gotten around to hiding it better. "You told me to pop in if I saw the landscapers," he added. I didn't remember doing that. Maybe I had. Divorce fog does soft edit your memory. He started leaving things in their right places. A set of measuring spoons I had half unpacked appeared nested and hung. My grandmother's quilt, still in a moving box, turned up folded at the foot of the bed. Once, I found my underwear dried, folded, and stacked with hospital corner neatness on the dresser when I was certain I'd left the laundry half-washed in the machine. I texted him, polite Ohio plain. "Hey Frank, thanks for mowing. Quick note, please don't come inside when I'm not home." He came over with a bag of rock salt and looked wounded. "Goodness, hon," he said, palms out. "Only ever trying to help. You don't have to make a federal case out of it." After that, I started locking the door like it mattered. He still found reasons to knock. "Your light's flickering. I got a bulb in the garage." "Storm's coming. Bring in that chair." "Saw a raccoon scoping your trash. Got a bungee you can use." When I didn't answer right away, he'd call through the door, gentle, Midwest soft. "Don't trouble yourself, honey, I'll circle back." The night I heard my own voice on his TV, I thought it was an echo. I was brushing my hair in the bedroom, half listening to the news, when a bright, stupid laugh, mine, cut through the wall. Then my voice said, "That's enough of that." The words were so ordinary I felt drunk hearing them elsewhere. I turned off my lamp and stood still. Through the blinds I could see the blue pulse of his living room. I cracked the window and my own voice got louder, tinny, strained by speakers as cheap as mine. I recognized the cadence immediately. It was how I talked to myself when I was trying to be gentle and failing. On his screen, I was in my bedroom, in the soft gold light of my bedside lamp, brushing my hair. The camera was at a low angle by the dresser, tilted up like it was looking up at me from the floor. The police officer who came out had that barbered, unbothered hair and a patience he'd probably used all day for other small emergencies. He stood in my doorway, looked in my bedroom, noted the lack of any obvious camera, and said the words people in uniforms are trained to say. "Nothing we can do unless you can show the device, ma'am. Best to keep your doors locked." I told him about the video in Frank's living room. We stood on Frank's porch while nobody answered. "He's probably asleep," the officer said. "We'll swing by later." He didn't. For a week, nothing. Then my cat, Charlie, didn't meet me at the door. I tore the house apart, calling his name. By the time I stepped into the cold, my throat hurt from saying it. Frank appeared at dusk, as if he'd been waiting for the light to go soft around the edges. He held a cat in his arms. "Not to worry," he said. "Found him wandering. Gave him a little milk." I took the cat on instinct. His eyes were almost the same green, but too wide, too young. The body was smaller. "This isn't Charlie," I said. He smiled like I'd told a joke. "Close enough for now. That's what neighbors are for." The next morning felt like waking in a model home arranged by someone with a gentle grudge. My toothbrush was missing from my sink and standing in a cup on his bathroom counter, visible from my window, angled like a little flag. A framed photo of my sister's kids sat on his mantel. In my hallway, a nail hung empty with a clean square of unfaded paint around it. My couch had been shifted 2 inches closer to the west wall, just where he'd suggested on moving day. I could feel it without looking. I walked across the grass between our houses without shoes. He opened the door before I knocked. "You don't have to make this big," he said calmly, like he was asking me to pass the salt. "We're the only 2 single people on this circle. Folks talk. Better to be a team about it." "I want my things," I said. The sentence felt simple enough to be irrefutable. He nodded slow. Sure. We'll work it out." He moved aside but didn't make room. Something about the way he said made the back of my neck go hot. I called my sister, the one who had warned me. She drove an hour with her husband and stood in my kitchen eating leftover casserole straight from the pan. "You can leave tonight," she said. "We'll come back with a truck." I nodded. Midwestern survival is often logistics. Frank watched from his porch as we loaded boxes that weren't ready to be boxes. He waved at my brother-in-law with a small-town smile that didn't reach the eyes. "Ope, watch your step there," he called, like we were his guests and the uneven sidewalk was his responsibility. When my sister shut the hatch, he raised a hand toward me, palm out. "No hard feelings," he said. "You're welcome." So I've been sitting on this for a minute, debating if I should even post. It's personal, but maybe someone out there gets it, or has been through something similar. I need to get this off my chest, and honestly, a forum feels safer than talking to anyone I actually know right now. It started like this, matched with this guy, Eli, online. Total whirlwind. He messaged back so fast, which I actually liked. Decisive, right? That's rare. We just clicked, talking about everything from bad school assemblies to our favorite last lines in books. When I mentioned I teach English at a public high school in Brooklyn, he hit me with a teacher apple emoji and asked what I'd do with a class that just refused to read. My answer? Read to them. He shot back. "So you're stubborn and kind. Dangerous." And yeah, that definitely made me smile. I was hooked, I guess. We met at this cafe. You know the type, pressed tin ceilings, those round tables that just will not stop wobbling. He was on time, looking sharp, clean-shaven. He had this scarf looped, the kind of way people do when they're trying to channel some Parisian vibe. Didn't look exactly like his photos, more like a sharpened, idealized version. He was such a good listener, head tilted, really engaged when I talked about my kids, my students, I mean. He even asked if I had a favorite poem to teach. I almost said Ray Armantrout's Privacy, then felt silly and just went with Something with Teeth. Looking back, that was some serious foreshadowing, huh? We started this thing Saturdays. Coffee turned into drinks, then his hand at the small of my back. That whole city dance of being close without being in the way. He never pushed to stay over, which felt respectful, almost old school. He actually said he liked the sound of my apartment at 6 p.m., which made me laugh until I realized he was right. The radiator doing its metronome thing, my neighbor's game shows bleeding through the wall. He remembered everyone, too. Jasmine with the purple braids, he'd say, "Did she ever turn in that essay?" He knew about my parent-teacher conferences before I even told him. He'd text the minute my G-train surfaced from a delay. "G-train treating you right or nah?" I even joked about it once, trying to keep it light. "You notice everything," I said. He just smiled, this really charming, knowing smile. Only what matters. That knowing. It started to feel heavy, like carrying too many groceries for too long. He'd guess what I was grading just from the ink on my fingers. Blue meant freshman essays, black meant attendance rosters. If I mentioned I'd been to the bodega, he'd ask if the cat was asleep by the ATM again, and what chip flavor I'd picked up. When I teased him about being a psychic, he actually laughed and quoted some poem about attention being love. And God, I wanted to believe that. I really did. I wanted to be the kind of person who could see surveillance wearing a flowered shirt and think it was romantic. I wanted to believe that intense, almost obsessive focus was just a deeper form of connection. That it meant he truly saw me. Like really truly saw me, past the surface stuff. Then I dropped a pen. It rolled behind my TV, into this tangled mess of cords and dust, where my hand found something else. The phone. Wedged back there, black and forgotten. It vibrated once, a little shiver, like it was relieved to be found. The lock screen was my face. Asleep. Mouth slightly open, not in that graceful movie way, just me. The angle of the shot, low, from my bedside table. My scalp just went tight. The camera roll was a nightmare. Folders. Folders. Bedroom. Kitchen. Doorway. Hall. There were videos of me making eggs, reading on the couch, putting on earrings. One of me crying while grading, a small, private cry I thought I'd buried under essays about metaphor. Sound off always, like a twisted kind of mercy. I threw up in my sink. I wrapped the phone in a towel like it could feel the cold, and I walked straight to the precinct. The detective was this woman with her hair pulled back so tight, it made me instinctively sit straighter. She asked for his name. "Eli," I said, feeling stupid. "Elijah?" I never saw a last name. "Address?" I gave her the block, the stoop where he'd dropped me off, the deli across the street. She tapped on a screen. "Not a real unit," she said flatly. "Rented by the week for people who pay cash." She raised one eyebrow like a hinge lifting. "You let him in your apartment?" It wasn't judgment, not really. It was the city asking if I knew the rules. If I understood how vulnerable I'd made myself. I changed the locks. I went full paranoid, checking every outlet, every light bulb. Google became my spycam Bible, and suddenly my phone ads were all for things that watched you back. The super came up, toolbox in hand, with this look I've seen on my students when they realize a quiz actually counts. "Folks put stuff where you don't think to look," he said, unscrewing plates. "Smoke detector? Clean. Plant pot? Clean. Books." He plucked my copy of Citizen off the shelf, looked inside, then handed it back like it was a bandage for a wound I didn't know how to treat. Eli never texted, which somehow was worse than if he had. The silence was its own kind of knowing. But life, it just keeps going. My classes still needed attendance taken, slips signed, essays checked for plagiarized hearts. We were in this unit on voice and permission. I taught them the difference between confession and performance, how some poems just hover over that line like a subway car whose doors won't close. I even made a joke about privacy, having a season pass in this city, because everything is an audience. The kids laughed. One of them, bless her, said, "Miss P, I saw you on the train this morning with your book open and your face like a dead fish." And I laughed too. It felt good to laugh at something that wasn't my own video. It felt like I was starting to reclaim my own gaze, my own narrative. But the weight of knowing, the chilling understanding of how easily attention can twist into something predatory, that's something I'm still carrying. It's not love when someone watches you like that. It's control, and it changes how you see everything. I met Theo the way you meet 100 other guys in Austin. Sweat slick air on Red River, neon in your eyes, your amp cable coiled like a snake asleep in your backpack. He leaned on a brick wall outside a venue that smells forever like spilled Lone Star, head tipped, listening to someone else's set with that practiced musician face. intent, wounded, a little superior. He asked if I played. I said sometimes, which in this town means always. He laughed and said, same. He was pretty in the way broke boys can be. Lean, soft mouth, wrists inked with cords he insisted weren't basic. We traded a cigarette, then a link to our stuff. He sent me a voice memo at 2 a.m., the kind that's more breath than melody. I listened in my kitchen with the fan on high and thought, okay, there's a shape here. The first weeks were music more than dating. We wrote on my floor, knees touching, a shaker egg rolling under the couch every time the AC kicked on. He had ears for the parts that make a song feel inevitable. Snare ghost notes, third harmonies you don't know you're hearing until they're gone. He'd tilt his head and say, it wants to go minor there, like the song had a will and we were just taking dictation. It felt like magic because it was. Then the small shifts. He started finishing my lines before I sang them. Not the obvious rhymes. He'd catch the crooked ones, the internal rhyme I meant to hide. He changed hands in the sink to hands in the rain, and it was better. I hated him a little, and he kissed me like that was the point. When I got a midweek slot at Hotel Vegas, and he didn't, the air between us changed temperature. He showed up near the end of my set, hair damp from the heat, and shouted from the back when I almost missed a lyric. People laughed. After, he hugged me hard enough to hurt and whispered, "You're rushing the bridge," like a secret. My songs started appearing online under burner accounts. Leaks, he called them when I confronted him, eyes bright like he'd brought flowers. Raw voice memos, drafts I'd kept in a folder called Not Yet, uploaded with dates stamped wrong. The comments were clean and mean, promising, derivative, promising. I changed passwords. I counted who had my Wi-Fi code. He cried, said the internet was feral, swore he'd help me scrub them. I told myself he loved the music so much he forgot how to love me, but the truth is he treated both the same, like things he could improve by touching. He started leaving little machines in my apartment. A loop pedal on the counter, a cheap field recorder on the shelf, a USB interface in case yours dies. I put them in a drawer, they multiplied. The night it tipped, the city was a warm mouth. We came back from a show on 6th, ears ringy, palms sticky from someone else's beer, and he asked to hear the new one I'd been burying. I said no. He said please. I played it once, just voice and nylon guitar, a clean ache. He stared at the strings like they were telling him something, then reached and moved my finger one fret. The chord soured and brightened at the same time. "There," he said. "That's where you live." I kicked him out. That should have been that. The next morning, my cassette deck was on, one of those chunky black things my dad used to keep. The tape inside wasn't mine. The room filled up with my voice singing the new song, only it wasn't my phrasing. He'd layered a harmony under the chorus that pressed into my melody like a bruise. In the second verse he'd spliced my breath so it landed after the downbeat. A hiccup, a catch, a choice I would never make. At the end, there was a whisper on tape. "You took everything from me," and it was my voice pitched down till it sounded like I'd grown antlers. I unplugged the deck and threw it in the hall, and it still felt like the song was moving inside the apartment. My cheap guitar strings hummed when I walked by. My kettle whistled in the key of D. The neighbor's balcony wind chimes found the top note of my chorus and sat there smug. I sent him a text, "Stop." He sent back a photo of my balcony from the street with the caption, "I'm not close." I tried to take the city back. I wrote at Barton Springs at sunrise and at a laundromat off Manor at midnight. I put duct tape over the laptop camera and unplugged the interface, and still, a new demo posted under another nothing account, 2 days later, with the exact rhyme swap I'd chosen in the laundromat when the dryer door thunked open by itself. I started to believe that small machines were his spies, and also that the city itself wanted a piece. The bats under the Congress Bridge felt like a choir. The hum under the highway was E. When I finally played the Hotel Vegas set he'd mocked, I changed everything last minute. New order, different capo, lyrics bent a different way. Halfway through the second song, he walked in with a notebook. He didn't look at me. He stared at his hands like they were misbehaving, then at the stage lights, then back at his hands. After, he didn't wait by the door. I found a sticky note on my pedal board. It was always supposed to be in 3. I didn't notice the temperature drop until my inbox went quiet. Not silent, just chilly. Threads I was always on suddenly forgot me. Calendar invites arrived after meetings ended. A quick huddle happened in the glass fishbowl while I waved from my desk with my Minnesota smile. I told myself it was seasonal. January in Minneapolis does that to people. We all move a little slower, mutter, "Oh, for sure, no worries," through scarf lint, and pretend our eyelashes aren't freezing. I'd applied for an internal promotion in December. My manager said I was the obvious choice. I did the interviews, slid into the holidays buoyant, and came back to, "We went another direction." No feedback, just a polite little thud. Fine. Happens. Except now my performance review had areas of opportunity I'd never seen before: tone, collaboration, perceived defensiveness. Perceived is a nice word. It lets you salt someone without opening the shaker. The all hands was the first real tell. Janet, our HR director, did her usual wellness spiel. Hydration, boundaries, please log off at 5 unless you don't, and then made a joke about rage quitting and taking the printer down with you. Everyone laughed. I did too, until my face cooled. 2 weeks earlier, I'd typed that exact line to myself in a draft email I never sent. It wasn't a threat, it was a midwinter joke to no one. The printer had jammed for the 6th time and I'd written, "If I rage quit, I'm taking that printer with me." I keep drafts to keep my mouth out of trouble. The drafts keep me. The next few days were deja vu and microdoses. In a stand-up, Janet quipped about bandwidth bandits who brand themselves as overwhelmed. I'd used the phrase bandwidth bandits in a note to self about protecting my calendar. At lunch, a colleague asked, too casually, if I really said I could do my boss's job better with fewer meetings. I'd written that to myself after my 3rd same meeting of the week. In a one-on-one, my manager mentioned optics. Then the anonymous company survey pulled lines I recognized in the cadence, if not the words. Questions about my professionalism, my alignment with culture, my negative energy and slacks. I asked IT for access logs on my account because I'm the kind of Midwesterner who says sorry while building a receipts folder. The report was dry as snowlight but honest. Multiple admin logins into my mailbox over the last month, all during lunchtime or just after 5, all under the generic HR admin umbrella. I forwarded the file to my personal email and then printed it because printers and I have a complicated relationship. Janet's office smelled like black coffee and eucalyptus. The skyway outside threw glassy winter light across her desk. I asked if HR had a reason to look at my emails. She smiled like I'd brought her a cardigan. "We reserve the right," she said, with that HR cadence that makes a blizzard sound like a policy. "Company property. Compliance. Also," she leaned in, conspiratorial, "people forget tone in writing. We're just making sure alignment is aligned." "Alignment," I repeated. It felt like being pushed gently with 2 fingers. "And optics," she added, as if she were offering me a second cookie. It got worse with the rumors. Anonymous complaints about my attitude. Slack DMs chilled with, "Hey, just wanted to check in on you, lots of folks are worried." And a coaching session about how we show up that included quotes I recognized as mine, taken out of context and held up to fluorescence. I stopped typing. That's not metaphor. I stopped writing anything that wasn't a calendar invite or a bullet point. My drafts folder went on a hunger strike. I put a sticky note over my webcam, even though I knew no one was watching that way. It felt like an umbrella in a snowstorm. Useless, but ritual. Then an old coworker from my previous job in St. Paul called. "Is your HR person named Janet?" she asked, voice pitched in the key of gossip that's a warning. We had a Janet. Different last name. Same a vibe. She'd check people's stuff if she didn't like the way they carried themselves. Said it was compliance, but it was control. She told me about a woman who'd called out sick and returned to find her browser history forwarded to her manager with concerns. That woman had quit quietly. "Document everything," my friend said. "Janet depends on people being too polite to name it." So I documented. I took screenshots of admin logins, timestamps, the survey language that sounded like my voice in drag. I started saving all hands recordings and highlighting the moments her jokes grazed my drafts. I wrote a timeline for legal in neat Minnesota handwriting, the kind you get from writing thank you notes for every casserole your family ever received. Legal didn't move fast. Nothing moves fast here in February. But the letter they sent to the board did something. I know because a week later, Janet resigned for a better offer. The announcement Slack was an avalanche of congrats, and you'll be missed, and the kind of heart emojis you deploy when you're relieved and don't want to look at. The office exhaled. People unfroze a little. My manager apologized for the miscommunications. Someone set a box of donuts by my desk like penance. None of it scrubbed the stain. Breadcrumbs are funny that way. You can sweep them and still find grease where the butter melted. A few coworkers stayed cool. One, who now chaired the promotion committee, never quite met my eye again. A client I'd never had trouble with started looping in my junior for continuity. My performance review was revised, but the word perceived never goes back to sleep. I stopped trusting my keyboard. I started talking in person, walking the skyways with a travel mug of coffee and saying, "Oh, for sure," to anyone who needed it. The glass tunnels between buildings made everything feel visible and safe, like we were all fish who'd agreed not to bite. But at night, when the temperature drop makes the air sound like it's cracking, I'd remember her jokes and my drafts, and the way admin writes can turn a person into a room you never agreed to let anyone in. Spring comes like a rumor here. Sidewalks go from polished ice to gray wet. The printer jams less, as if it too had decided to behave. I write again on paper. Lists in pencil, ideas that can be erased, wiped, rewritten. My laptop at work is immaculate. Empty drafts, clean sent mail, sentences boiled down to bone. Silence looks like disengagement on a dashboard. In a winter city, silence is also how we survive. The first time I saw him, he was pushing a mower across my front patch with the solemn focus of a surgeon. I stepped out onto the porch, blinking in the late June glare, and he lifted one hand without stopping. "Just help in, ma'am," he called over the engine. Yard was getting a little long. I didn't ask, I said, but in Birmingham you say things soft, so it came out like a suggestion. "You don't have to." He nodded like I'd thanked him and finished in neat, parallel rows. When he killed the engine, the quiet rushed in. The cicadas, the far-off whine of 280, someone's wind chimes trying to sound expensive. He was 19 tops. Hoodie tied around his waist, even in the heat, shag of hair in his eyes. "Name's Kai," he said, staring somewhere at my shoulder instead of my face. "We're next door. Mama's the one with the lemon tree." "I'm Nora." I gestured at the house like I had to prove it was mine. "Well, thank you." He tugged the hoodie free, wiped the mower handle with the sleeve, then draped the hoodie across my porch rail like a flag that had decided to be casual. "Forgot this," he said, smiling without showing teeth. "I'll get it next time." There isn't really a polite way to say don't come back when someone's just done you a kindness. In our neighborhood, you wave at the mail carrier and bring back wandering dogs and make a casserole when the power goes out. "Y'all need anything?" Floats over crepe myrtles the way pollen does. So I put his hoodie on the lemon tree fence post between our yards and told myself, next time I'll be clearer. Next time showed up 2 days later with a weed whacker. He trimmed the edges I hadn't noticed were messy and reset the latch on my backyard gate. When he finished, I took him a bottle of water because that's who I am. He didn't open it, just held it while he looked past me into the kitchen like he was reading a map. "Gate sticks," he said. "I can fix it proper if you want." "We're good," I said. "But thanks." He nodded, eyes dropping to my shoes. "You put your left pair on the right side of the mat," he said, like he was complimenting me. Smart. That night I found his hoodie on the patio chair again. A different one, black, heavier, sweat rings dark at the collar. I carried it next door and left it on their porch swing. His mother opened the door while I was halfway down the steps, hair pinned up, dish towel in hand. "Lord have mercy, I'm so sorry," she said, already apologizing for something she hadn't heard yet. "He's just a helper. That boy got born in help mode." "He mowed my lawn," I said. "It was kind, but he keeps leaving things." She looked past me at my yard like she could see the shape of what I meant. "I'll talk to him," she promised, the way moms promise when they know they can't compel anything but a chore. A week later, I got a text from an unknown number. "Hey, your gate's stuck. Want me to fix it?" The bubble sat there, bright and sure. I scrolled my recent messages to make sure I hadn't given him my number while trying to be neighborly. I hadn't. "Who is this?" I typed. "Kai next door. Saw you fussing with it last night, came back immediately, as if he'd kept his thumbs poised over the keys." I didn't answer. I put my phone face down and turned the TV on loud, and then muted it because the noise made the house feel watched. 2 afternoons later, I came home and found the front door unlocked. Not open. Not forced. Just unlatched. Could be me, I thought. Could be stress. Could be the way a day gets long, and you forget where you put yourself. I stepped inside and paused in the entryway, letting my eyes do their job. Everything sat where I'd left it until the bathroom, where damp footprints bloomed on the bath mat like shy flowers. My towel had been set back on the rack with a precision I don't apply to my own life. I bought a camera that night, more out of spite than faith. Cheap, conspicuous, a little blue LED that made me feel ridiculous and safe. I put it above the back door, angled at the latch. The next afternoon, 3 hours after I left for work, the camera caught him. Daylight, hoodie up, hands calm. He slid a tool under the lock, gave it a gentle pop, no show, no hurry, and walked in like he'd remembered something he needed. He was inside 11 minutes. When he came out, he relocked the door, tested the handle twice, adjusted the mat so the pattern lined up with the threshold, and left. I called the police. The officer was young and already tired, the kind of tired you wear when you've been told to be a diplomat in a uniform. He watched the clip on my phone and blew air through his nose, which I have learned is a sound men make when they don't want to say what they think. Looks like a boundary issue, he said finally. But nothing broken, nothing taken. You got a camera? That's good. Keep documenting. We'll go have a word. They had a word, apparently, because the next day his mother came over with a paper plate of store-bought cookies under plastic wrap. I am so sorry, honey, she said, eyes shiny. He thought he was helping. Says he's seen your mop bucket out. He thought maybe you were busy. She shoved the plate at my chest, so I had to take it. He don't always understand lines. I understand lines, I said, quieter than I meant. This is my home. She nodded like she did, like she wished that were the fix. Boys just being boys, she tried weakly, in the HOA tone we both hated. Boys are men when they have tools, I said, and we both stood there in the doorway, two women steering a conversation around something heavy in the room. The escalation was small and mean. I'd come in, and one mug would be swapped with another on the open shelf. A plant I'd been half killing would be watered, just enough to look like a rebuke. My shoes would be aligned too neatly at the door, tips kissing. He left his phone on my patio table once, screen lit with my Spotify open like a wink. The camera caught him bringing it back the next day, the glee of justification on his face. See, I had to come in. One night I took a shower late, the kind that's half therapy, water so hot it makes you repent. The house was quiet enough to hear the cicadas buzz behind the tile. I stepped out and reached for my towel, and there, hanging on the back of the bathroom door, was a gray hoodie. I did not scream. I stood very still, feeling my heartbeat in my gums, and looked at the steam on the mirror, broken by the outline of fabric that had not been there when I undressed. In the pocket, a folded napkin, gates fixed. K. I grabbed my keys with wet hands and walked out of my house barefoot. I didn't turn off the lights. I didn't lock the door. I got in the car and drove to a friend's place and sat on her couch in a towel while she made tea we didn't drink. The next morning we went back together. My door was locked. The hoodie was gone. The camera showed 11 minutes again. I filed again. This time the older sergeant came with a younger officer and stood in my kitchen as if nothing bad can happen where there's a refrigerator. We'll talk to him, he said. Might be best to upgrade your locks. Folks out here get too comfortable. I bought real deadbolts. I put a bar on the slider. I learned to sleep with one foot already on the floor. In the group chat, the HOA debated whether our lawns looked welcoming, and someone posted a meme about community, and I typed out a paragraph and erased it because I didn't feel like being the cautionary tale that lives in the minutes of a meeting. We went up into the mountains because every fight in the apartment sounded like a blender, and the idea of sleeping near something that wasn't an outlet felt like forgiveness. Dean said fresh air would rinse us out. I said fine and stuffed the tent into the trunk like I was angry at fabric. The road curled and uncurled through damp green, rhodo, hemlock, laurel, until the radio gave up and the only music left was tires talking to gravel. The campground we picked had a wooden sign that leaned a little, like it had learned something heavy. Sites were a sprinkle of clearings along a creek that sounded rehearsed. We chose one where the ground tilted just enough to make you notice. Dean got the poles wrong twice and laughed at himself the way you do when you're trying to make sure it still counts as charming. I held stakes in my teeth. Every request came out as a suggestion. Maybe angle the fly, he said. Maybe you could not, I said, and then immediately wished I hadn't. At dusk we followed the path of orange-tinted voices to the communal fire pit. A couple waved us over like they'd expected us. She wore a flannel shirt that didn't look new and still somehow had no ash on it. He had the kind of beard the woods grow for you when you pay attention. They introduced themselves as Laurel and Pierce, which sounded a little like they'd renamed themselves here. We're locals, Laurel said and laughed. Well, local right now. We passed a dented flask and compared bug bites. They asked easy questions that somehow found the sore spots. How long had we been together? Long enough. What brought us up here? A coupon. Why this weekend? Calendar didn't argue. Pierce hummed along to someone's Bluetooth speaker, like he already knew the fiddle line. When the song stopped, he kept humming for a beat, and the crickets corrected him, and he corrected the crickets. The fire snapped a knot and sent up a comet of sparks that looked like a map of somewhere we hadn't been yet. Back at our site, Dean tossed me the headlamp and kissed my temple like he was paying a bill. He said, "Let's not fight," and I said, "Okay," which is the closest we'd been to prayer in weeks. He fell asleep with one arm crooked over his head like a picture of relaxation. The creek kept its own counsel. Somewhere deeper in the trees a bird made a sound like a door hinge. In the morning our food was gone. Not rifled or nibbled. Gone. The cooler was still latched. The bag where we'd tied a line into a sapling hung light as laundry. The line itself had been retied in a neat knot I didn't know. "Bears?" Dean said, and then made a face because even in our living room bears had always been a metaphor for not now. I turned to joke that we could always eat Dean if things got bad, but the tent flap wavered without Dean walking out, a cheap imitation of him. The inside was empty. His boots were where he'd left them by the door, toes turned toward each other like they were apologizing. I said his name without the end consonant, half-breath, to see what came back. The trees breathed out. The creek talked on. I checked the pit toilet, the trail to the creek, the stand of trees where someone had hung a dream catcher that had learned to be rain. By the time Laurel and Pierce appeared on the path, I had already rehearsed my anger into a list. They didn't look rushed or out of breath. Laurel's hair was dry in a way that didn't match the morning. "Found him by the creek," Pierce said, smiling like a Boy Scout handbook. "He must have wandered." Dean walked behind them the way people walk behind suitcases they're pulling. His eyes were dull coins. He didn't meet mine. He placed his gaze somewhere near my shoulder like it had to be set down. I went to him, hands on his cheeks, shaking a little. His skin felt cold from the creek or from something older than water. "You okay?" I asked, which was the wrong question. "Fine," he said, but his mouth barely opened. The words sounded pre-recorded and played through a body. Laurel looked at me as if I'd asked a question she could answer. "Folks nap strange up here," she said. "Lot of whisper in the trees at night. You hear it?" "What whisper?" I said. The creak helpfully grew louder. We got him into the camp chair. He sat like furniture. I made coffee out of the last sad scoop, and he didn't reach for it. He didn't reach for anything. When I asked if he remembered anything, he blinked like I'd thrown a small pebble at him. Laurel and Pierce stayed near, hands in pockets, smiling the way people smile outside a nursery window. "Breakfast?" Pierce asked, and from somewhere, their pack, the woods, the neat air behind them, he produced a bag of jerky and some kind of granola wrapped in wax paper that tasted almost like a recipe someone had chosen instead of invented. "We like to look after folks," Laurel said. "People break easy." That night, when I couldn't sleep because my body had memorized New York noise and refused to believe anything else could be bedtime, Dean began to hum. It wasn't his register. He has a warm alto he uses in the car. This came from lower, like a bottle half full of river. The tune didn't climb or fall. It repeated a phrase that didn't conclude. After a minute I realized it matched the creek's rhythm, had stolen it or been given it. When he stopped, the crickets fidgeted, as if they'd been keeping time and lost the conductor. When he started again, they settled. In the morning I said, "Let's go." I said it calmly, like a note taped to a door. He looked at me with eyes that were the right color and wrong speed. "We just got here," he said, late to the line. I packed anyway. I moved around the site, making piles, making choices, and every time I turned back to the car, something in the piles had shifted itself half an inch like insisting it had another opinion. Laurel appeared on the path before I zipped the tent bag. "You're not ready yet," she said simply. Not threatening. Not a question. Her smile had softened into something like pity. Pierce stood behind her, looking at the trees as if they were saying something to him, and he respected the talk. "What does that mean?" I asked. "Who are you?" "Just people," Laurel said. "People who listen." When I reached for the driver's side handle, they stepped together without hurry, and their bodies were just bodies, but the way they arranged themselves felt practiced, like the way water knows where to go. "You can try," Pierce said gently, and the way he said try made my chest go cold. I didn't try. I left the keys where they were, and went back to the tent because I loved Dean, and because love sometimes means you sit in foolish places until the foolishness goes home. Around noon, hikers passed on the trail above the site, 2 women with sticks and those pink socks that promise you won't blister. I wanted to yell. I wanted to say, "Please, can you smell the wrongness?" But my mouth made polite noise instead. "Morning, pretty day." One of them looked down, and then away in the exact way you look away from a couple having a tense moment in public. "We're still working on it," I heard myself say, and the words sounded like both of us and neither.